Hello, grades 1 and 2. Welcome to lesson number 3 of our music class of online learning. This week I want to go way back to the beginning when we were talking about the families of instruments. And then we'll move forward to talk about the instrument that we're currently playing. And I'm going to ask you which family you think it belongs to. And in that case, I'm talking about the bells that we were working on. So if you remember far back at the beginning when we first met, we talked about how instruments belong to different families. We had the percussion family, we had the string family, and we had the wind family. And we could divide instruments into the three. Some thoughts of learning say there's a fourth family, but it's easiest if we just stick to these three families of instruments where the most common ones fit. We talked about the piano being a string instrument. Sometimes people think it's percussion because you hit something to get the sound, but it's actually the strings that vibrate to create the sound. So with the percussion, I wanted to introduce very quickly to you a friend of mine, and this is PD Percussion. And he is the head of the family of percussion instruments. Do you think bells are part of percussion? Then we had the string family. I'm going to introduce you to Sammy String. And Sammy String is the leader of the string family. Do you think bells are part of the string family? And finally, I will introduce you to Waddy Wind. And wind family is led by Waddy, part of the wind family. Do you think bells are part of the wind family? Let's show you some live instruments. Here's our percussion instrument, a set of little bongo drums. Here is an actual violin, part of the string family. And here is a trombone, part of the wind family. Each of these instruments create their sound through vibration, but vibration of hitting, vibration of pulling the strings, or the vibration of the sound going through the tube. Depending on the length of a tube, the sound is higher and lower. And depending on the length of the string where you put your fingers on, and on the piano, depending which note you hit, lengthens or shortens the string, that creates the different sound. And the drums, depending on the size of the top and the depth, creates a different sound. So all the instruments have a similar principle. The vibration is what creates the sound. If you were to collect a tube at home and you went with different tubes, you can tell by the length of them the sound changes depending on the length. And that's where our music is created, from the vibration and from those three family of instruments. Now, you would have received home this week a worksheet. And we've talked about lines and we've talked about spaces early on. And we had to place notes, whether they had lines going through them or spaces. Then we talked about the treble clef, the top treble clef that you had to draw, and the bottom bass clef. This week, what I want you to begin to do is to understand how the clef at the beginning creates a different name for the note. So we're going to go back and you're going to number the lines of these staff. Remember, staff's 5 lines, 4 spaces. And then here at the very bottom, you'll see L. Put a note anywhere on that staff that's a line. S, anywhere on that staff that's a space. And go through and do this page. It's pretty easy. There's some more specific. Write whole notes in spaces. Write numbers 1 to 4. Draw whole notes with lines through them. And by lines, that means smack through the center. By spaces, that means without a line. Now, each of these notes are affected or get their name depending which clef is in front. So your second page is actually a musical staff with the treble clef that you practiced drawing last week, or the week before, pardon me. And now we're going to begin to place notes within the spaces of the treble clef staff or through the lines of the treble clef space, as treble clef lines. And that will identify the note names for you. So if you look at this sheet and you notice the first part here, the note that's in the treble clef staff living in the first space is called an F. That is the address of the note. How that note is played on a piano or a violin or any other instrument is where the note lives on the instrument. This is the address of the note, and then where it actually lives, makes its sound, will be on the instrument. This F will always be an F that lives in the first space of the treble clef. Anywhere in the entire world, if you see a treble clef with the staff line and a note living in the first space, I don't care where you are, it will always be an F. So this is our universal language. So what I want you to do this week is to work really hard at memorizing what the names of the notes are inside the spaces or through the lines. If you look at the treble clef staff, the spaces actually spell a word, which makes it pretty easy. F-A-C-E spells face. So you can review that. The lines also have letter names, and we use a rhyme in music. I live on a farm, and I like to use some farm names for the bass clef, and I like to use the treble clef people ideas. So every good boy deserves fudge. So the treble clef are referring to people ideas. People have a face, and every good boy deserves fudge. E, G, B, D, F. Now these are some notes that you actually played when you were playing the bells. Any idea which family it begins or belongs to? Does it belong to Petey percussion? Does it belong to Waddy wind? Or do the bells belong to Sammy string? Put up your hand if you think it's Sammy string. Put up your hand if you think the bells belong to Waddy wind family. Put up your hand if you think the bells belong to Petey percussion. If you said Petey percussion, you're right. The bells are part of the percussion family. And when you were playing those bells at Christmas, you were actually playing some of the notes that we just talked about that live on the treble clef staff. So you were already playing notes on the treble clef staff before you were reading the staff. Now we're going to begin to read the staff. So when we're all back together, which I hope is soon, we will begin to be able to play the bells by reading music. Some of you played the bell F. Some of you played the bell called G. Some of you played the bell called A. Some of you played the bell that was the B. Some of you played the bell that was the high C. Some of you played another bell that was the low C. Some of you played a D. Some of you played an E. And I remember we also had an F sharp, which is a whole nother story in our song. But you were already doing this. So this week, what I really want you to concentrate on is reviewing the family ideas, writing the notes on this staff. This is not treble or bass. It's just reviewing space notes and line notes. So then you understand how those are affected by the clef. The treble clef staff, space, notes, spell face. Face is the space in the treble clef. The treble clef line notes are every good boy deserves fudge. Every good boy deserves fudge are the line notes for the treble clef. Have some fun with that. See you soon.